A long afternoon in room 6B. Room 6B was an apartment on the second floor of an old building. The hallway outside had a faint echo, though no one walked there most days. Inside the room lived an office clerk named Simon, who had taken the afternoon off for no particular reason. He sat in a plain wooden chair near the window and looked at the small view of the parking lot below. 3 cars were parked in the same places they had occupied since morning. None of them moved. He checked the small table beside him. On it rested a coaster, a folded envelope, and a pen that had run out of ink 2 weeks earlier. He lifted the pen, tested it again on the corner of the envelope, and watched the tip slide without leaving a mark. He put it back down. The moment felt complete, though nothing had changed. The room held a mild stillness. A curtain near the window moved a little, because the window was not tightly shut. The fabric rose and fell with the air, steady and slow, without much variation. Simon watched it for a while. He then shifted his attention to the sound of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. The hum came and went in a pattern that did not follow any rhythm he could guess. Sometimes it paused for several seconds before continuing. After a long while, he stood up and walked toward the shelf near the corner. The shelf held 7 items: a cup, a small potted plant, a clock that had stopped working in April, a thin novel he had not finished, a folded receipt, a spare key, a small frame with no picture inside. He touched the plant lightly to see if it needed watering. The soil still felt soft from yesterday. He left it alone. He walked back to the window and looked at the parking lot again. A small breeze moved across the asphalt. Nothing else shifted. A single plastic bag was caught near a fence and swayed gently as though unsure whether it wanted to move. Minutes passed with no sound. Simon opened the window a little more. The curtain lifted higher now. He watched the folds rise and settle. The pattern repeated slowly. He imagined marking a tally for every time the curtain moved, but felt it would take too long to follow through. He chose not to try. In the kitchen, he poured a glass of water and placed it on the table. He did not drink it. The glass fogged slightly near the top. He traced the line of condensation with his finger and then stepped away. The refrigerator hummed again. It sounded the same as before. He checked the clock on the wall. It showed 3:16. He had checked it earlier at 3:12, though he had not realized how much time had passed until he saw the new numbers. He nodded once, then walked to the door of the balcony. The balcony was small, barely wide enough for 2 steps. He stood there without leaning on the rail. The air felt mild, neither warm nor cool. He looked at the rooftop across the street. A small bird sat on the edge of the roof, turned once, and then stayed completely still. He watched the bird for several minutes until it finally flew away without urgency. He walked back into the room and sat down again. The chair made a faint sound against the floor. He rested his hands on his lap and looked at the blank wall across from him. He noticed a faint line near the baseboard that he did not remember seeing before. It could have been there for months. He did not bend down to check it closely. After a while, he stood again and walked to the bathroom. He turned on the faucet and let the water run briefly. He washed his hands and looked at the mirror. His reflection looked the same as always. He blinked twice and then turned off the faucet. A small drop of water slid down the side of the basin. He watched it reach the drain. He returned to the living room and moved one of the pillows on the sofa. He adjusted it a little to the right and then back to the left. He stepped back to see if the new placement seemed balanced. He nodded faintly, though the change was barely noticeable. He checked the refrigerator again, though he did not plan to eat anything. He stood in front of it for several seconds, then opened the door. The light came on, and he looked at the items inside. A carton of milk, a jar of pickles, a half-empty bottle of water, a small container of rice. None of these interested him. He closed the door gently. He sat once more near the window. The parking lot remained unchanged. The same 3 cars, the same breeze, the same shadow of the building across the street stretching slowly toward the curb. A man walked by at one point, carrying a brown paper bag. He did not look up at the window. He passed quietly and disappeared from view. Simon lifted the empty pen again, tried writing with it, then set it down with the cap on. He placed the coaster in the center of the table and adjusted it slightly until it aligned with the edge. He heard the refrigerator hum again. The sound rose gently and settled. The hours drifted without hurry. The light in the room shifted from white to pale gold. The curtain moved in the same slow pattern. The parking lot stayed the same. The room breathed in its own quiet rhythm. As the afternoon lengthened, Simon did nothing remarkable. He simply existed in room 6B, while the hours slid forward in the smallest steps possible. Nothing demanded his attention. Nothing changed except the passing of time. When the first hint of evening touched the window, he stood up, stretched once, and turned on the small lamp by the sofa. The light filled only part of the room. It was enough for him. The afternoon had ended. Nothing significant had taken place. Yet the quiet felt complete in its own simple way.